is 6 o'clock in the Eastern time zone. And that means on the first Thursday of the month, it is time to start the Cincinnati TV Toastmasters meeting.
Thank you. As you can see, I'm coming to you from my car. I am parked in a parking lot. I thought I could make it to my destination before, but that didn't happen. I have a chirpy little bird sitting right outside of my car. So if you hear some chirps, it's just a bird splurging on worms, I guess, getting prepared for the cold winter months. Okay, moving on to our grammarian word and counter. That is Janet Kesslin.
Good evening, everyone. The word of the day is splurge. It can be a noun or a verb in the noun form. It is an act of spending money freely or extravagantly, such as the annual pre-Christmas splurge.
It is 5 to 7 minutes. David is someone who believes in never giving up on his own dreams, and he strongly encourages others to pursue their own dreams passionately. Today, David will talk about someone who never gave up on their own dreams, greatly inspiring him, and David hopes to pass that inspiration on to others today. This is the talk that David had planned to give yesterday at the club contest. Technical glitch prevented that from happening, but he's still looking into competing at the area contest. Never give up on your dreams. David Ash. David Ash, never give up on your dreams.
Yes, thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster, or yes, Mr. Toastmaster, and welcome club members. And I don't think we have any guests today. So yes, I am definitely someone who is very passionate about pursuing one's dreams. And I do want to talk today about someone who has inspired me, who himself was very much someone who pursued his dreams even when it didn't seem like something that was going to happen. And the person I'm actually going to talk about is noted as a noted mathematician. And I promised that I'm not going to be talking at all about the technical details of mathematics. So I assure you, if you're not into math, that's not going to be what the topic of this speech is at all. The speech is going to be very much about the human process involved and not about the math at all. There's some people out there, a lot of people out there who really are not that big on math. They don't really love it. They don't. In fact, a lot of people really can't stand it. Then there's a smaller number who do kind of tolerate math when they, because they understand its practicality. For example, the math drives important things in the world. Like math is kind of the thing that's behind Bitcoin. Math is really driving Bitcoin. So there's some people who understand its practical value in the world, but maybe aren't really passionate about it. Then there's a very small number of people out there who really deeply love math. And for those people, math is something that it's almost like an art form for them. It's something where they love it and they want to solve really tough problems in math, and it's a very great passion for them. And I'm here to talk to you today about someone like that. And but before I get to that, let me mention that when someone's really passionate about math, often they have a focus on solving some really tough problems. In the world of mathematics, there are some really tough problems that have been unsolved for hundreds of years. And it's sometimes a goal to solve one of these really tough problems. One such problem that was solved is something called Fermat's last theorem. And it was proposed back in the 19th or the 17th century and was not solved until the 20th century. So it took hundreds of years just to solve Fermat's last theorem. And many mathematicians over that time period worked on it. One of them was Sophie Germain here, who worked on the problem back in the 19th century, made significant progress, but it took until the late 20th century before it was finally solved. But so that just gives you kind of a taste of how mathematicians they are so passionate about it that they'll work on problems for hundreds of years in the hope that they'll eventually achieve that dream. That maybe they achieve it in their life and maybe they don't, but that's really the dream. And sometimes they're so passionate about math they even forget how to spell properly. That's not their thing. So the mathematician I want to talk about is someone named Yitong Zhang. He's a Chinese-American mathematician. And he, like the mathematicians who worked on Fermat's last theorem, wanted to solve one of math's really tough unsolved problems. And he obviously wanted to work on this problem. He came to the U.S. Back in the 1980s from China, and studied at Purdue University and worked on this really tough math problem during his time there. He was studying for his PhD, and he worked on this problem, but he really did not make a whole lot of progress on it. In fact, he kind of barely graduated. He kind of barely scraped through with his degree, and it was not that successful an experience. He kind of had a falling out with his advisor when he graduated. So he did graduate, but he had this falling out with his advisor. This also happened around the same time as Tiananmen Square. So this was he was from China, and I'm not sure to what extent that impacted his decisions, but it probably was at least a consideration. So he found himself not fearing to go back to China, probably, but also not having any kind of a good recommendation from his advisor. He could not get a good job. He could not get really any kind of a job after graduation. So he was kind of in a new country, but his career was taking a huge nosedive because he could not get any kind of a job. And yet he did not give up on his dream. This was a dream that most people would have given up on by that point, but he did not give up on it. But what happened then? Well, he couldn't get a job, so he ended up homeless and kind of living out of his car, and obviously not a very good situation for quite a long time. So he was stuck homeless for a while. So his first kind of step out of that was to he found a friend who had a job at Subway, and he was able to get a job at Subway, partly managing the books. So that used a little bit of his math ability, but it was not math at the level that he wanted to do. But he was spending some of his time actually kind of making the sandwiches at Subway. Again, nothing wrong with making sandwiches at Subway, nothing wrong with doing the books at Subway, but it was clearly not the dream that he personally had for his life. So he worked at Subway for a period of time, but again, never gave up on the dream and continued to apply for jobs in academia. Eventually, he did get a job as a researcher. Not as a researcher, but more as a lecturer at university. I believe it was in Maine. And interestingly, one of the mathematicians who hired him for that job was someone who himself had worked on a really tough problem for many years. And perhaps that was inspired this person to hire him. So he got this job, but it was still not that good a job. I did not really allow him to work that much on his research, but he continued to work on this. Another one thing I should mention is that math, it's sometimes seen as something of a young person's field. So it's something where people kind of figure you're over the hill at the age of 30 or whatever in this field. But he never gave up. And finally, at the age of 58, which is, again, very old for mathematicians, or at least that's the culture of the field. I don't think it's that, but the people in the field think so. He finally solved this amazing problem that no one had been able to solve for 200 years. And it was just this amazing achievement, and he won the huge respect of the mathematical world. This won him a great new job at UC Santa Barbara, and he's gone on to work on other really, really tough problems, and he's now recognized as one of the top mathematicians in the world. This is a great example of not giving up on your dreams. He was homeless, working at Subway, and then he never gave up, went on to become one of the very top mathematicians in the world. Thank you, and back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
I'm going to introduce the next speaker. This is Veronica. She's working on her Pathways Dynamic Leadership Level 1, Researching and Presenting. This is 5 to 7 minutes. TEAL, Getting Help from Groupthink, Veronica Sanford. Veronica Sanford, TEAL, Getting Help from Groupthink.
Welcome, everyone. I will say that I have been between jobs since May of 2023. This is highly unusual for me. Most of the time, I've been a contractor about half my career. Most of the time, I'm between jobs for about a month, and that still seems like a long time. But this particular job market has been a little bit different than most of the times that I have been between jobs or contracts. What's been going on with the world of IT or technology? For me, what's been going on is that there are so many people who want to work remotely and so many companies who want everybody to come back into work. That's number one. Number two, the economy, some could argue, in terms of the world of technology, has been extremely volatile with a lot of tech companies laying people off. That's two. Number three, there's the AI world, artificial intelligence world, which, while theoretically not taking anybody's job, is definitely helping to, quote unquote, streamline a lot of jobs that means that perhaps could be done more efficiently by using AI than not using AI. So perhaps companies are needing fewer people. I believe that it is mostly an economic concern. Now, as a side note to AI, there's a type of technology called agile, which means delivering projects quickly, every 2 weeks, actually, putting something into production, allowing the customers, the business to take a look at it, revise it, and then you deliver again in 2 weeks and you deliver it iteratively. That is my specialty. Well, old project management, which was what I called command and control, sort of militaristic, was that you were planning everything at the beginning, budget, scope, manpower, person power, everything, and doing the design, doing the coding, taking another year to do the coding, another 6 months to do the QA, turning something over to production, and then the customer goes, that wasn't what I meant. So anyway, that's actually started a resurgence. So the way of doing project management, the way that I love delivering and delivering and delivering, has been put on the sidelines a bit in favor of companies that will go back to, you have to get it done and you have to work all this overtime. And that's the way that it is. So for one reason or another, I've been between jobs for about 8 months. And I'm okay financially, so it's even harder to get back to work. That said, what I have started to do is use a tool called TEAL, just like the color. So you don't have to splurge on something that is something between green and blue. TEAL is a type of AI software. And what TEAL can do, it can help you streamline and revise your resume so that the crowd will more likely approve of the wording of your resume than you just on your own can think about it. This particular type of AI, which is based upon ChatGPT or a large language model, that's a separate talk for a different time. And I know David Ash had given a talk on AI before. But what it does is it predicts the next best word, or in essence, the next best paragraph, or for your resume, the best way to summarize your experience. And number two, it really knows how to autofill a job application. And TEAL in particular will take a job that you choose and your resume and will plug in every single field as needed. And you can double check it and make sure it looks the way that you want before you hit submit. Well, I can tell you, having been a contractor since about 2008, when the financial crisis hit, I have a lot of jobs on my resume. And all that cutting and pasting was just so annoying. To have this tool autofill everything for me was way exciting, really fun. And because it's free, I didn't have to splurge on anything. It was free, right? Okay, so number one, it will help me revise my resume. Number two, it will autofill all those job applications, one after another, after another, after another, and it will do so quickly. Number three, it will help me write my cover letters. So it can craft a cover letter based upon my resume and the job description, and I can auto fill in Mrs. So-and-so or Mr. So-and-so. And number four, it can also do a thank you letter after I have the interview. Now, icing on the cake, it will also keep track of the status of each particular job application. Right? And so I don't have to keep track on my little spreadsheet. It's all in one system. Now, I will say there is another automated tool out there, and it's called Lazy Apply, and I do not recommend it. And the reason I don't recommend it, because it sounds wonderful, is that you give it a resume and you tell it what you want, it would automatically fill 100 job applications a day. You don't get a chance to double check it. You don't get a chance to make sure that it's filling out the jobs that you want. You could get double submitted to the same job, which is a no-no from perspective of what a company wants you to do. Only supposed to apply to the job one time. There are legal reasons for that. But I will say, if you do find yourself out of work and you'd like to take a look at it, or if you know somebody who is, take a look at TEAL HQ. Thank you.
Go ahead, Ron. Table topics.
Oh, okay. Interesting that I usually like to try and come up with, oh man, here it is. I like to try and come up with some kind of a theme for the day to base the table topics on. And I hadn't heard that we had a theme, so I just went on and found out what kind of celebratory things are going on for January 4th. And it came up with 7 different ones. So I'm going to base the table topics on those to ask people about. And the first one that is celebrated on January 4th is Dimpled Chad Day. And I'll ask Dave Dillahunty, do you know what a dimpled Chad is? And if so, could you explain it a little bit?
No, I don't know what a infidel Chad is. I never heard of that. The only Chads I know that was pinched off down in Florida in the election year of I think Al Gore and George Bush.
If that's what the dimpled Chad is.
Thing down there with the Chads.
Yeah, that's what this is about.
Chads. Yeah. So that'd be a kind of interesting thing to find out about. And like I say, I have no idea what that is.
That's what it is. Dimpled Chads. It's the Chads that were on those ballots.
Oh, okay. Oh, well then I guess I was on the right path after all. Because I know they had a lot of KR, a lot of bickering back and forth about the Chads from both parties at that time. And I guess they had to do a lot of ballot recounting. So that made it kind of difficult for the election, but they finally got it all done. And I guess George Bush was the victor. And back to you, Toastmaster.
Janet, today is also National Spaghetti Day. Do you like spaghetti? And if so, what do you put into your spaghetti that you like so much, or that you know of somebody that makes spaghetti that you like so much? Tell us a little bit about your spaghetti stuff.
Thank you. Mr. Tabletop Master, for my question about spaghetti. Yes, I love spaghetti, and I used to make it quite often. I do still make it sometimes. Sometimes I'll use a sauce from the store, like ragu. I usually use a plain sauce if I can. But my husband and I did do some canning of tomatoes this past fall, and so we have a nice tomato sauce that we can use on our spaghetti. We tried it once and it was good. I know that one of my sisters had a roommate who would make spaghetti from scratch. I guess it took her a real long time, and she had lots of pots and pans. And in their case, the person who cooked didn't have to do the pots and pans, but the other roommate had to do it. So my sister didn't like having to do the pots and pans on spaghetti day. But anyway, so some people, spend a lot of time making their spaghetti, and I tend to be more simple and do not splurge so much about it. Thank you, Mr. Tabletop Master.
Very good. Myself, I'm more of a put the stuff in it spaghetti. My wife makes one of the best spaghettis I've ever eaten, and love having it when she makes it. And there's all kinds of things that go into it. So really good. Today is also National Trivia Day. And Dave Ash, what types of trivia can you tell us about that you are aware of? What's some trivia that you would like to bring forth to the crowd here?
Oh, thank you for the question. What kinds of trivia? That's always a tricky question because I'm used to games like Trivial Pursuit where you answer trivia questions, but figuring out what kind of what kind of trivia is, well, I guess one one that I'll just mention is that Lake Superior is the largest body of fresh water in the world, I think by surface area, and I think Lake Baikal in Russia is the deepest one. Lake Superior, where I grew up on, is the largest one by surface area. So that's one that I really note. Let's see what other good trivia.
We'll talk about some of your trivia games.
Well, yeah, I don't. Well, I mean, I definitely enjoy Trivial Pursuit as a game, and haven't played it in quite a long time. Let's see. I guess another one is that the longest serving president in U.S. history was FDR, which is kind of, I think, something everyone knows. Let's see what else. What else I can think of here in terms of good trivia. Yeah, I don't think I have a whole lot else. It's kind of a tricky question, but thank you, and back to you, Mr. Topic Master.
It's also Tom Thumb Day. Veronica, who was Tom Thumb, and can you tell us a little bit about the story with Tom Thumb?
If I remember correctly, and it doesn't really matter if I do or not, I'll make it up. Tom Thumb was a theoretically fictional character that was told about in the stories of little kids. And Tom Thumb was very, very, very small. Now, at the moment, I'm sort of merging Tom Thumb with Jack and the Beanstalk, because as I remember, Tom Thumb crawled up the beanstalk and saw a giant there. Now, the giant woke up and came down the beanstalk and ran after Tom Thumb. But Tom Thumb somehow or another overcame the giant, and the giant ended up helping everybody else around the community reach things that they couldn't reach on their own. Thank you very much. Back to you, Mr. Tabletop Master.
Very good. It is also National Hypnotism Day. And Jeff, have you ever been hypnotized or know somebody that has been hypnotized, and what was done during that hypnosis period?
I have never been hypnotized to my knowledge. Entirely possible I was hypnotized and they made me forget. But I do recall, and you as well, Ron, and probably Janet, we were all members or involved with Wilmington Toastmasters. The president of the club was David Debbie May, and David was the president, and he was into a lot of different things, aromatherapy, and one of the things that he was into was hypnotism. So I knew somebody that performed hypnotism. I myself have never been hypnotized. I enjoy watching videos of these performers / hypnotists that you can find on YouTube, where they will take an audience member and literally make them cluck like a chicken and walk around and do just crazy things. And then afterwards, they have no knowledge of it. They have no idea that they were actually on the stage even. So I don't know if that's performance theatrics or if they actually really were hypnotized. That's my experience with hypnotism. Back to you, Mr. Table Topics Master.
Do we have time for another one?
I think so, Ron. Go ahead.
Okay.
One last one.
It's also World Braille Day. Joy, do you know of anyone that's ever used Braille or know much of anything about Braille that you could bring forth to the rest of the group?
Thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak about Braille. The thing that I know about Braille is it is so accessible. When you started seeing the little dots in an elevator, and even as a child, what are these little dots? Well, they're so the blind people can tell what floor they need to get off. You also, in public buildings, you'll see signs for getting around in the building, and they now have that in Braille. I also find that there are people that read to the elderly or they read to the blind. But the most fascinating thing to me is that blind people, once they learn how to read, it's just like learning Morse code and learning another language. When you use your fingertips to read, you are reading the language of Braille, which is a series of dots that end up making words, and people can then be more participatory in the world by being able to use Braille. So that's what I know about Braille, and back to you.
Interesting that you've mentioned how many different things you can see Braille on anymore. This is a pill container that I use on a daily basis. I have a series of them that runs for 2 weeks. And on the lids of this container, the days are all in Braille, so that people can tell what day pill they're using. So I found that kind of interesting. And that wraps it up for table topics. And sorry I didn't get to everybody, but I found it interesting that there were so many things to celebrate today, and they worked out well for table topic subjects.
Yes, next we have our evaluators. And since David spoke first, I am going to have Veronica evaluate David's speech first. Veronica.
Thank you very much. And thank you so much, Dave. David, I really did enjoy your inspirational speech about this mathematician. And I thought that it's always fascinating to hear about people who have overcome challenges, and the fact that this mathematician came from China, and it was during the time of Tiananmen Square, and that he worked on a mathematical problem that other mathematicians were presumably also working on at the same time. And yet, throughout this whole process, he overcame those challenges and was able to solve it, and then therefore stopped being homeless, stopped living in his car, stopped working at the subway shop, and went on to, be recognized as a fine mathematician. So I think that the fact that you stood up and that you were presenting as if you were alive, which is great, rather than on Zoom, means that you're what would become a competition speech, you're very well prepared for. Now, I will say that in order to make your speech even better, to make it, what it's a competition worthy, what I'm hoping to do is give you some tools that are there to kind of bring your speech quality is great. What could be improved a little bit is, I think, your eye contact. For me, eye contact is generous. If I and this is difficult when you're giving a speech sometime, but if my eyes go right to my camera, it makes a difference. And yet, the only way I can do that if I'm online is if I have my notes right underneath my camera. So I sort of block out some of what I would normally see. Now, when you're doing it in a competition, the only way that I think you could do that is get to the point where you can use a couple of bullet points on an index card and then possibly even write some notes on your palm of your hand. That way, in case you really, really, really get stuck on an idea, you can just look at the palm of your hand and not do it, obviously, but do it in a way that you just look down briefly. But it did seem like your eyes were down towards the ground, perhaps with a laptop that was in front of you. Number two, and again, it seemed to me that, and I have to move my little notepad here to my own, it seemed to me that your hands were going in and out a little bit like an accordion. And that if I used to play the accordion, so if you could make a deliberate gesture at the moment where, let's say, he's making sandwiches in the subway, or he's working through a mathematical problem, whatever it is, that you could imagine some gestures that would be completely appropriate for that moment. You don't have to make a gesture every single word, but if you do make a gesture, you have it count. And all in all, I think it's a great and inspirational story, and I wish you all the best in this competition.
Thank you, Madam Evaluator.
Yeah, and thank you, Veronica. And now I will ask David Ash to evaluate Veronica's speech.
Thank you, Madam General Evaluator. And yes, it's my honor to evaluate Veronica's speech on TEAL. And I know as evaluators, we're not supposed to be focusing too much on the content of the speech. That is going to be difficult for me today because the topic is it's a very timely topic for me. I'm in exactly the same position as Veronica, and I'm going to say that I have myself for now chosen a slightly different path. I have chosen to splurge on a career coach. So I'm kind of starting with a human approach. I may bring AI like TEAL in at some point. I love that recommendation, but for now I'm going down a slightly different path. However, given that I'm in the same place as Veronica, it's a very timely topic, and therefore it's hard to divorce the topic from the evaluation of the speech, but I'm going to try. With regard to the opening, so yes, obviously the fact that it was a topic of interest caught my attention, but I do think the opening was very well laid out. Veronica indicated kind of what the challenge was, indicated some things that have changed recently to make things a little bit different now, which explains why there needs to be speech. So it's a great way to open the speech. I would, however, recommend maybe a little bit less time on the intro. I took a little bit of time to kind of get to talking about TEAL at all, and I would have thought maybe a little less time on that intro would have been good. However, I thought that once we did get to TEAL, that the transition was very good. You kind of explained what the problem was, and then you said, okay, here's the solution you're going to employ. Great story. You've kind of explained what the story was that motivated this whole talk. And I think you also explained what TEAL was very well. So that was, that was very well explained. I also thought the conclusion was great. I don't know if it's really part of the conclusion, but it was close to the conclusion. You were saying, okay, you recommend TEAL, but you also did not recommend some other things. So that was good. Maybe a few more gestures would be good, kind of the opposite of your feedback for me. A few more gestures would be good. You did not use notes. You had great eye contact. One other thing I might suggest, kind of the strongest suggestion I might make, because you were talking about a piece of software, I think visual aids would have been really good. Visual aids are kind of important in some cases, not in others. If you're talking about software, I think that's really important. So that's the one thing that I would definitely recommend. But I think it was a very well organized speech. I think it flowed well from beginning to conclusion, and I thought the transitions were good, easy to follow, and some great suggestions for those of us for whom the topic is timely. Thank you, and back to you, Madam General Evaluator.
I found that no one really splurged on the time today, but I was not good at remembering to use the word splurge earlier. It's so important to time these reports because as we participate in contests, you can be disqualified if you go over the time. So David, your speech was 7 minutes and 25 seconds. So you did not go over. Veronica, I counted your speech at 7 minutes and 36 seconds. So going on to the table topics, Dave Delahanty, I learned, they told me when I first started Toastmasters, you can just make up whatever you want to say about those chads being the best meal you ever had. You don't really have to know what it is. You just need to speak. But you were successful in speaking for 50 minutes. Oh, Dave is just joining us back, but he asked 50 seconds, not, being thrown off by such an unusual celebratory day. I'll tell you, that's unusual. And Janet spoke for 1 minute and 30 seconds. And Dave Ash spoke for 1 minute and 24 seconds. Veronica was succinct. She did not splurge her time. She spoke for 43 seconds. And Jeff spoke for 1 minute 9 seconds. And I was trying to wrap up because I didn't give myself the green. I was watching the timer, but I did speak for 1 minute and 20 seconds and never went, I never went to green, I don't think. And so as I said, Dave Delahanty, when you're given a table topic, you really don't have to know what the subject means. You can just totally make it up. Sometimes Veronica says, or act like a politician and answer whatever you want to answer. But I was told when I started Toastmasters, just make up, whatever they ask you about, just make something up. So I said those chads were the most delicious meal I'd ever had. All right, well, in the evaluations, Veronica spoke for 3 minutes and 30 seconds. And David spoke for 2 minutes and 45 seconds. So that is my timer report.
Thank you, Joy. Well, sounds like most everybody was within time. And now we come to the general evaluator portion of the meeting, and I chose that role for this evening. And I do remember the meeting started on time. A couple people joined a little bit later. That's why I kept putting the word of the day in the chat, because I think if I put it in early, the people that join later don't see it. So I tried to do that for everyone tonight. And Jeff did a good job as Toastmaster rearranging the meeting so it had a good flow. And first, I thought the evaluations were really good. You know, Veronica used more of a sandwich method of evaluation with stating good things and tools that he could improve on, and ending with some other good things David did in his speech. And then when Dave gave his evaluation of Veronica, he had more of a weaving method where he said some good and some little suggestion and some good, some little suggestion, etc. But it was, you know, very nice conclusion and good evaluation. In table topics, that was a clever idea to pick the theme of the day and that they happened to be like 7 themes or something for the day for table topic questions. That was great. So thank you for that. And let's see. As far as any technical glitches, you know, when David was first giving his speech, I didn't see the background that he wanted me to see at first, and then eventually it changed over to that. So I'm not sure what I need to do. I was wondering if anyone else had that problem. What I need to do to see the right background when David was giving his speech. And so I think talked about a lot of things in the meeting, and I did notice that Sean entered, and he hasn't had a chance to say anything. Sean, did you want to say anything?
That's so nice for you. It's totally okay. I'll pop in every once in a while. I don't have to say anything. I just know I'm smiling in the background, checking out your beautiful faces. You guys are doing great. Thank you, Janet.
Thank you, Deshaun. Yeah, and you know, the meeting was well put together, and we had some people feeling extra roles at the end, but all the roles were filled. So I'm proud of this club for as well as it does with signing up for meeting roles ahead of time, and you know, very interesting and timely topics of speeches. So I enjoyed the meeting. So now I'll turn control of the meeting over to our Toastmaster, Jeff.
Thank you, Janet. It was really great to see so many people on tonight. I think most everyone participated. I always find these Toastmasters meetings provide some tidbits of information that I can use in a practical way. So tonight it was spaghetti recipes, it was simplified resume creation, mathematical theorems, or at least, being honest, the inspiration from a mathematical protege or professor. So with that, I will turn it back to our president. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone. I'm going to echo what Janet said. I'm really proud of this club. We do have good attendance tonight, and everyone's very enthusiastic. We also have one of our members, David Ash, who is competing in the international contest, and we're looking forward to hearing more about that as the time goes on. So very proud of all of you. I think it's time to wrap up the meeting. I know you'd be pretty disappointed if I didn't leave you with a grin. And so it seems like I'm always bragging about myself, but I wanted to tell you about one of my holiday gifts. Someone splurged on me. I got a taser. It was quite stunning.
Oh,
All right, everyone. All right, we can wrap up the meeting for tonight.